Welcome back in, everybody. A Monday edition of Birds 365. Just 8 days away, everybody, from the Eagles reporting to training camp. We have officially made it, basically. I mean, just a week to play. Not officially, but almost made it. 8 days to play until the Eagles are back at training camp and reporting. 9 days away until they are on the field. Johnny Mac, let's close out the conversation that we had before Caden joined on Nick Sirianni. Just any final thoughts on his changed role, the perspective, the perception around it. You guys said you had a chance to talk to him, initially off the record or however you said it. It was on the record, but delayed on the record in a way before you could talk about it. Just any closing thoughts on the whole Nick Sirianni thing?
Yeah, it's tough. It's, we kind of talked about with Caden. If the offense is successful, he's going to have nothing to do with it. If it's unsuccessful, it's going to be all his fault. But he gets it. I mean, that's life of a coach and quarterback as well in the NFL is, when you're successful, it's we. When you're unsuccessful, it's me, or it should be. In the case of the leadership aspect of it. And Nick understands that. So I think from my perspective, and I wrote about the rebranding, and everybody can check it out at si.com/NFL/Eagles. He's put himself in the best situation I think possible to regain solid footing in 2025 if this goes well. And that's at this stage, that's the best he could have done after the collapse last season, from my perspective.
We'll see how it plays out with Nick Sirianni, Kellen Moore, and the whole Eagles team in 2024. High expectations from the fans, from the front office, from the owner, from the head coach, from everybody for the year. So we will see how it plays out. Johnny Mac, last week we did our training camp previews. We got through quarterback, we got through running back, got through tight ends, got through wide receivers. So we did most of the offense, did all the skill positions. Let's talk O-line. You did two of them. You did interior O-line, and we did offensive tackles. Let's start on the interior O-line. How do you preview that position coming into training camp? To me, that is obviously the part of the O-line that has more question marks with no Jason Kelce. Cam Jurgens taking over the center role. Tyler Steen projected at right guard. How do you view the interior of the O-line coming into training camp?
Yeah, much more uncertainty than typically there is in Philadelphia. Obviously, been a little bit spoiled by the presence of Jason Kelce over the years. But I do think, ironic that it kind of matched up with Jeremy Fowler's sort of top 10 list, ranking the players around the league over at ESPN with the help of coaches and executives. You kind of saw it with Landon Dickerson. He was called the best run-pass combo guard in the league. He's at that level now where he's in the conversation for being the best overall offensive guard in pro football. We talked about with Caden, Cam Jurgens. To me, I'm not worried about Cam Jurgens. Now, some people have taken that the wrong way and said there's not going to be a drop down from where Jason Kelce played. Jason Kelce was an all-pro for 6 of his 7 final seasons, whatever it was. He is going to be in the Hall of Fame. I'm not saying he's going to be that. I'm saying you're going to get competent play at center. I don't think it's going to be – you're going to get winning level play at center is how I would describe it. It's not going to be an issue. It doesn't mean you're going to get all-pro level play.
Is that just from a physical perspective, though, John? Because, I mean, a lot of people are talking about the stuff Kelce did that wasn't physical, picking up blitz and stuff like that. I do view that as maybe not a problem yet, but definitely something to keep my eye on.
Well, I'd rather the quarterback. I've talked about that.
Yeah.
I'd rather the quarterback take that over, but it looks like the Eagles are going to keep the status quo. And one of the reasons they're going to keep the status quo, and one of the reasons they drafted Cam Jurgens and they were so high on Cam Jurgens is because of his football IQ, and they think he can handle that kind of stuff. Doesn't mean it's going to be as good as Kelce again, but I do think he is going to provide winning level play for the Philadelphia Eagles. So I don't think you're going to be coming out of a lot of games saying, "Oof, Cam Jurgens, um, cost us the game." Um, I don't. I think he's a good player. Doesn't mean he's Jason Kelsey. Doesn't mean you're going to get offensive line porn every week where he's 30 yards down the field blocking
Right.
people like Kelsey used to do. That kind of stuff is other level, and that's, you have to understand when you lose a Hall of Fame player, you're probably going to take a step back, and they will take a step back, but this is going to be a good player, and I feel very confident in that. More importantly, forget about me. Jeff Stoutland feels very, very comfortable with that assessment. And then Tyler Steen, complete, yeah, unknown. He got one opportunity last year, failed dramatically, to be honest. It wasn't good. But I do like that the Eagles have a bunch of contingencies, and it's not only Mekhi Becton, it's also Matt Hennessy, it's
Yeah.
Max Sharping. They got a bunch of guys to where I always compare it to the setup of 2017, where it was Isaac was the young player. They wanted him to take the job. He wasn't ready. They had Chance Warmack. They had Stefan Wisniewski, and they eventually got that competent winning level play from Stefan Wisniewski. I think ultimately they'll find it, whether it's Steen, Becton, Hennessy, Sharping. Somebody will provide that, but it's hard to just say it's going to be Tyler Steen. But they've set themselves up with good contingencies at least.
Let's move right into the offensive tackles coming off that comment there, John. Because of Mekhi Becton, I mean, they're talking about him as a potential, potential right guard, potential swing tackle, obviously a first round pick who really has a lot of upside now here in Philly. Seems to like it here, at least when he spoke at his press conference. He likes it here. The reason I jump right to Mekhi is because there's not many questions, John, at the tackle position coming into the year. I mean, let's talk about him, but you have Jordan Mailata on the left, who I think is only getting better and better and better, potentially going to be a top tackle in the NFL in these next coming years. And then on the right side, you have Lane Johnson, who is a bona fide all-pro and who has been playing at a very high level for a long time. Let's start with Lane, getting a little bit older. Any concern on Lane Johnson coming into the year?
No, no. I mean, you're going to be seeing Ed Kratz and I are doing our top 25 list. I'll just say Lane is very high, as typically
Yeah,
Lane is very high on that list every year. He's just really good. He's getting older. Obviously, the Eagles understand that. They value that position so much. I do think if Troy Potano fell to him, maybe that's the way they would have went in the draft. Um, didn't work out that way. They shifted gears. They're very cognizant that he's not going to be around forever, but he's like Kelsey, man. He's still playing at an all-pro level. And to do that late in your career is pretty phenomenal. You don't worry about, one of the biggest luxuries, we talk about all the problems with the Eagles offense. Maybe their biggest luxury is they can point at their two tackles and just put them on an island
yeah,
and rarely give them any help, rarely have to give them any help. There's not a lot of teams in the NFL that can do that. We're talking for the most part, even somebody like Micah Parsons, Nick Bosa, you've seen over the years, they don't even help with those guys for the most part. The one exception would be inside. They used to help a lot with Aaron Donald. Um, they just leave these guys alone and say, "All right, it's up to you." And for the most part, they hold it down in a very effective fashion. I mentioned Jeremy Fowler's list. Both were top 7 according in the NFL, according to NFL executives. Lane a little bit higher than Jordan. I actually think Jordan is really close to Lane now.
Yeah, I think Jordan's still just ascending to it at a rapid speed.
Yeah, Jordan's one of the greatest stories in NFL history.
Yeah.
To come from complete neophyte, didn't even know how to put on his helmet to what he is today.
And by the way, I don't think the story's over yet. I think he's going to continue to get better and better and better. I mean,
he's only 27 and he's got
that's what
two
I mean.
$60 million extensions already.
And the athletic prowess that he has. I mean, I think he's going to be getting better until he's 30, 31 years old. I really do.
Yeah, well, the way he can move and how big he is, and I
Yeah,
know Baldy said he's 380. The Eagles list him at like 360, I think, but we're somewhere around that range. I'll look exactly, but he's 380, and he carries that weight like he's not overweight. He's just one of the most massive
right.
people. He looks like a giant pro wrestler. He's just massive, and he's got the athleticism that people 80 pounds lighter don't have. It's
Yeah, he
just
wears it well. He's the right weight
yeah.
for his size, right?
He's a freak of nature athletically. And you know, the Eagles, it's the best position they have. You could argue wide receiver at the top, but then it drops off a cliff, as we talked about with AJ and Devontae. That's very similar to Jordan and Lane. But then you drop down to Mekhi Becton, who, look, he didn't live up to the hype with the New York Jets, but it is the New York Jets. There were some injury issues, and we've only got to see him in the spring before the pads go. He's another massive guy. He might be starting at right guard, but if he's not, he's going to be the best swing tackle in the NFL.
Yeah.
He can play left tackle. He can play right tackle. He's more comfortable at left, but he can play both. He has played both. And he might be one of the best backup players the Eagles have. So they went about it a different way. It was clear they wanted to get that sort of setup where, potentially in the draft, they would have gotten a guy that could start out at right guard and then maybe kick him outside in a couple of years to replace Lane Johnson. Maybe they found it with Mekhi Becton. It's more complicated because
the contract stuff.
The contract and where he is, and he's obviously gonna want to make money. And best case scenario is he doesn't play. So who knows how long he'll want to wait, but there for this particular season, I would say offensive tackle is the Eagles' best position.
Do you think that's how it will play out? I know you don't know yet, and we'll see how it plays in camp. But just your early projection, do you think it will fall that Beckham is your swing tackle and Tyler Steen is your guy at right guard, or could it go a different direction?
Yeah, I mean that's what the Eagles want.
Yeah, right.
And that's the plan. That's the default plan. But it all depends on Tyler Steen. And I could see a scenario where they essentially flip positions, and if Mekhi's the starting right guard, then Tyler Steen might become the swing tackle. I've said, and last year at camp, the Eagles project Tyler Steen inside because of his arm length, but he played strictly a tackle in college. He played right tackle at Vanderbilt, left tackle at Alabama, never played guard until the NFL projected him there, and he's more comfortable playing tackle. So I could see those guys swapping positions if Mekhi Becton's forced to be the right guard. But, as a swing tackle, he can do it. And there's not too many teams that could bring a player with the talent of Mekhi Becton off the bench. Not to say he's a great player, but again, we're talking about a bench player at this stage.
Yeah, so good stuff on the offensive line. I mean, we're suited pretty well at the offensive line, even with losing a guy like, Hall of Fame center Jason Constant. Let me just real quickly give a big nod to Howie Roseman. I mean, you lose Fletcher Cox and Jason Kelsey in the same offseason. These are Eagles Hall of Famers without a doubt. Jason Kelsey's potentially a gold jacket NFL Hall of Famer. I think he is. We'll see how it plays out. I think
He's going to
Fletcher's
Hall
right
of
on the
Fame.
brink of that. I mean, I know we have the questions about replacing those guys and what that's going to look like, but what a job by Howie. I mean, you lose Fletcher and you know you got Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, and Milton Williams right there, and you lose Jason Kelsey and you know you got Cam Jurgens right there. I mean, that's all Howie can do, right? Like we can't ask him to sign a Hall of Fame center, or that's the best contingency you can ask for. And we got it. And that's good. That's good work by Howie Roseman in the last couple of years to get those guys, to bring them in. And now we're looking at this in a much better way where other teams lose Hall of Fame guys and they're in a rut for years because of it. I mean, look at who are the fans replacing Aaron Donald with. Now he's a tougher guy to replace, but still, we at least have a guy in Jalen Carter where we're like, that guy can be an all-pro. I mean, it's good stuff from Howie Roseman. This is where he does his job, at the top of the game.
Well, you give Howie his flowers. Can I take some away? Yeah. I mean,
go for
it. Look, I'm on record. I think Howie's a great GM overall, but I mean, he plans for the offensive line. He plans for the defensive line. Those are foundational positions in his mind, and he's correct.
100%.
We're talking with Caden there, and we're talking about Zach Cunningham at linebacker. Oh, Zach Cunningham's still out there. He does nothing at linebacker of relevance, and he's getting, Cam Jurgens and Tyler Steen and Mekhi Becton, and always thinking ahead on the offensive line. Always thinking ahead on the defensive line. Jalen Carter was the most Eaglesy pick ever. I joked when they took him. Easiest predictive pick I've ever had. If he was going to fall to him, and ultimately he did because so many other teams are scared of their own shadows. But, linebacker, he does the exact opposite.
Yeah, but you know what, John? Look, I'd like the linebacker to be a little bit better too, but all day I'm gonna take.
Oh no, I agree. I mean,
I'm gonna take that.
Much
that we
more
have
valuable positions.
Exactly. It's just more valuable, and you're not gonna be perfect. You know what I mean? Like that. I hear you, but in a way, it's nitpicking. There's not a GM in the NFL where you can go down their roster and say, "Oh, they got every position." I mean, look, he does neglect it. We've said it. We think he's now neglected it too much, which I think is a fair criticism of Howie Roseman. But when you look at who he's versing or the other GMs in the NFL, I think he's the top, John. I think he's the number one guy in the NFL right now in terms of general manager.
Hey man, I was on that boat early.
Yeah, you were. You called them top three. I remember like 3 or 4 years ago on this channel, and I remember the commentary, the comments.
I remember the hate.
Yeah. I remember the hate. I'm right there with you, John. I remember it. I remember making the video. I remember making the thumbnail. I remember the whole thing. This was back before Jalen Hurts showed he was an MVP, and nobody was ready to call Howie Roseman that. And people were saying fire Howie. So just got to give him some credit for sure. And I like to do that.
Well, some people think I'm too easy on Howie. So every once in a while.
Well, I mean, look,
it's hard.
Even when you're being objective, right? Even if you have, like John is, very objective, no allegiance to the Eagles, no fandom in Johnny Mac's takes. If you're objective on Howie Roseman, he is a bona fide top 3 GM, no matter how you slice it. And that's just the truth. So we're going to give it to you. And that's what Johnny Mac thinks. That's what I think. And I agree with that for sure. I think he's top in the NFL right now. There's not a GM I would take. Maybe the guy in San Francisco has done pretty good, but he also gave up 3 first-round picks for Trey Lance.
Yeah, people forget.
I mean, that's a blunder and a half, Johnny Mac.
Well, it's only a blunder and a half if you don't fix it.
Yeah, but even then, you still gave up the 3 picks. So they fixed it.
Yeah.
How good could they be with 3?
Well, it's the same thing. I mean,
picks?
Things, the Eagles, the original plan was for Andre Dillard to be the left tackle. And ultimately, it didn't matter because Jordan Mailata turned into Jordan Mailata. It happens to every team. And
Yeah,
You
but
know,
3 first round picks, Joe,
as long as
it's
you
one thing
find
to
the
miss a
player.
pick. To trade 3 of them and your
Well,
guy doesn't even
quarterback's different because if you want to get up to the top of the draft to get up, you know you're going to have to pay a premium.
well, so if you're gonna
Um,
pay that premium, you better damn be right.
well, they're proven you don't have to be right.
Yeah, well, there you don't. Brock
Um,
Purdy has saved them for sure.
and you know, look, it's sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. Yeah, I mean that happens. Same thing. I mean, Howie's got his misses. Everybody's got. If you're as long around, if you're as lucky enough to be around as long as Howie Roseman, you're going to have missed draft picks. People that don't
It's
understand.
every GM in the league.
Yeah, people that harp on that just don't understand the process or what it is. I mean, it's not a science. If it were a science, it'd be easy. But you know, look at that moron. You know, very good player, and I'm going to call him a moron. Jordan Addison. Look at him getting arrested for DUI over the weekend.
Yeah.
This is a guy who already was arrested previously for going, I don't know, 140 driving, and his teammate just was killed by a drunk driver. I mean, you know, so ultimately, and I hope he wakes up, and I hope he matures very, very quickly, because if he does, he already proved he was a great rookie receiver, and hopefully he turns it around. But if he doesn't, um, and things continue to go down in a negative direction because of his behavior, that doesn't mean he couldn't play, because he's already proven he can play. There's so many things that can factor into it. Jalen Carter, I mean, there's a boy, I there are so many of these stories with these players driving
Mhm.
100, 130, 140. Rasheed Rice, Jalen Carter, you know, accidents. In the case of Carter, the reason he wasn't the first pick or the second pick in the draft was because of a tragedy, because of speeding and reckless driving, and so many of them do it. It's
Still, I mean, you saw that story from UGA, the amount of
yeah.
DUIs and pullovers of people. I mean, you would think at some point these grown men
Well, they're
or
not
fat.
grown men. People
Well,
forget they're
some
very
of them are.
young.
Jalen Carter's a grown man, John. He's making millions of dollars to be an NFL
Well,
player. He's a
yeah, I
grown man
mean,
in my
from
eyes.
a financial perspective, yes. From a physical perspective, yes. From a dictionary definition, whatever we describe, 21 being a voting age and drinking age or whatever. Um, yes. From maturity, no. A lot of these guys aren't adults from a maturity level. Some are. Um, Everybody matures at a different rate. You know,
Yeah, my
you always
point
talk
is
about
that when
Jalen
things
Hurts.
happen, it forces people to mature at different speeds. When your teammate dies in a crash from a drunk driver, or when you get pulled over and you risk your NFL career for speeding, doesn't that like trigger a lesson in your
You
head
would
or
think.
something
You
where you're
would
like,
think.
let me be a grown man. Let me make my money for my family. Let me do what I need to do to be a responsible adult and move forward.
Well, you saw the Georgia story.
Yeah, that's really
It's pervasive. It's pervasive. I mean, go down to South Philly tonight. You'll hear all the drag racing, and I don't know. I don't know how to fix it. But when you have so much to lose, the fact that these players, specifically, who have that much to lose from a financial perspective, not only, I mean, in a life perspective, think about Henry Ruggs, and
yeah, it's
you know
amazing.
he killed somebody, vehicular man. He's in prison because he was driving 130, 140.
147 he was going when he hit that car. 165 is what his top rated speed was in that crash.
Um,
It's just
yeah, it has become a big issue with young people in general, and certainly NFL players. But let's be honest, NFL players have more to lose certainly from a financial perspective. But when you talk about losing life and people going to prison, and I mean, whew,
I'll just
that's
say it. I mean, you can't fix stupid. That to me is just
yes,
drop dead stupid. I'm not trying to be that person, but you're stupid. If you have that much to lose and you are in that type of position and you make those decisions, you are stupid. That's how I believe. That's how I feel about that.
yeah, yeah. I wouldn't call Jordan Addison smart today. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I'll be the one to say it. I'll call him stupid. I mean, come on, Jordan, put your head on straight, brother. It's time to grow up and be a man and make better decisions. But anyway, I digress. Johnny Mac, let's get to a commercial break. We closed out our previews on the offense. Good interior O-line breakdown. Good offensive tackle breakdown. Positioned nicely at the offensive tackle position. We will see how it shakes out with the interior of the offensive line. We'll get to a break and we will dive into our first preview of the defensive side of the football. Johnny Mac, you dove into the edge rushers first, so we will do that next on Birds 365. Appreciate everybody in the chat this morning. 450 plus across all of our channels, over 200 on YouTube, over 250 on Twitter. I appreciate all you guys being here. Make sure you drop a like on the show. Stay tuned. Birds 365. We'll be right back.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.